Welcome to TrueCrime Unveiled Podcast. Dive deep into the mysteries that captivate us. If you appreciate this episode, please consider liking and subscribing to support us. Today, we delve into a case that chills the heart of every parent. The disappearance of Etan Patz. It's a story etched into the annals of true crime, a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities that exist even in seemingly safe environments. May 25, 1979. Marked a day that forever changed the landscape of missing children cases in America. 6-year-old Etan Patz vanished into thin air on his short walk to the school bus stop, just 2 blocks from his home in the SoHo neighborhood of Lower Manhattan. This seemingly ordinary morning would unravel into a decades-long nightmare, a labyrinth of dead ends, false leads, and agonizing uncertainty for his family and investigators. The case became a symbol of a generation's loss of innocence, forcing parents to confront the horrifying possibility that their children could vanish without a trace in broad daylight. Etan's disappearance marked a turning point, a before and after in how society perceived child safety. Prior to 1979, milk cartons didn't feature the faces of missing children. The idea of stranger danger wasn't so deeply ingrained in the public consciousness. Etan's case became a catalyst, propelling the issue of missing children to the forefront of national attention. It led to significant changes in law enforcement procedures, the development of national databases for missing children, and a heightened awareness among parents about the potential dangers lurking in everyday life. But before the national campaigns, the media frenzy, and the years of investigation, there was just a little boy, setting off for school on a seemingly ordinary morning. Imagine the scene. A vibrant Friday morning in SoHo, the streets bustling with life. Leston, a small boy with a bright smile, dressed in a blue corduroy cap, a blue pilot's jacket, and carrying his favorite Eastern Airlines bag. He was eager to buy a soda from a nearby bodega on his way to the bus stop. It was the first time his parents had allowed him to walk the 2 blocks alone. They watched him from the window, a typical parental glance, never imagining it would be the last time they saw their son. This seemingly mundane detail, the soda Etan was looking forward to, would become a haunting piece of the puzzle, a constant reminder of the ordinary life tragically interrupted. This seemingly simple 2-block journey became the focal point of an exhaustive investigation. Every inch of the route was scrutinized. Every resident and business owner questioned. The initial search, hampered by a lack of immediate awareness and coordinated efforts, quickly escalated into a citywide manhunt, then a national plea. The image of Etan's freckled face, his innocent gaze, became ubiquitous, plastered on posters, newspapers, and television screens across the country. The search for Etan Patz transformed from a local missing child case into a national obsession, a heartbreaking symbol of a parent's worst nightmare. Less than / person 1 greater than. Less than person 1 greater than. So before we delve into the harrowing disappearance of Etan Patz, it's crucial to understand the context, the backdrop of his life. SoHo in the late 1970s, while certainly a vibrant hub of artists and creatives, still retained a strong sense of community, particularly within its smaller, residential pockets. Prince Street, where the Patz family lived, was one such enclave. Neighbors knew each other, children played together on the sidewalks and in the small parks. There was a palpable sense of safety, a feeling that children could roam relatively freely. Imagine cobblestone streets, the aroma of freshly baked bread wafting from local bakeries, the sounds of children's laughter echoing in the afternoon sun. This was the world Etan knew, a world that seemed, on the surface, idyllic and secure. This was a time before the constant fear of stranger danger gripped every parent's heart, a time when a 6-year-old walking to the school bus stop alone was not an unusual sight. It's important to paint this picture to understand the sheer shock and disbelief that rippled through the community when Etan vanished. Yes, it was a different era. There was a sense of trust, a communal responsibility for the children in the neighborhood. Etan's parents, Stan and Julie Patz, were active members of this tight-knit community. Stan was a freelance photographer, his work often taking him around the city, capturing the essence of New York life. Julie ran a small catering business from their loft apartment. Their home, a converted industrial building, was filled with art and the energy of creative pursuits. Etan, described as a bright, inquisitive child with a mop of red hair, was a familiar face on Prince Street. He was often seen playing with his younger sister Shira, or exploring the neighborhood with other children. He loved magic tricks, and neighbors recalled him eagerly showing off his latest illusions. His parents encouraged his independence, allowing him to walk the 2 blocks to the bus stop for the first time that very morning. It was a milestone for Etan, a symbol of growing up, of gaining a new sense of freedom in his familiar world. It was May 25, 1979, a Friday, the start of a Memorial Day weekend. The weather was pleasant, the city buzzing with the anticipation of a long weekend, and, eager to catch the school bus, left his apartment around 8 a.m. He was wearing a blue Eastern Airlines cap, a blue corduroy jacket, gray pants, and blue sneakers. He had $1 in his pocket, money he planned to spend on a soda at a bodega near the bus stop. This seemingly ordinary morning would soon turn into an unimaginable nightmare. The walk to the bus stop was a routine one, a route Etan had taken countless times with his mother. He would walk down Prince Street, turn the corner onto West Broadway, and then walk another block to the bus stop on Prince and West Broadway. It was a short distance, barely 2 city blocks. But on this particular morning, something went terribly wrong. Etan never made it to the bus stop. He never made it to school. The initial assumption, as is often the case in these situations, was that Etan had simply wandered off, perhaps distracted by something along the way. Maybe he had gotten lost in the maze of city streets. This was a relatively common occurrence, and most children who went missing were found within hours, often just a few blocks from their homes. The police were notified, but the initial response wasn't one of heightened alarm. After all, this was SoHo, a seemingly safe neighborhood. Etan's parents, however, knew something was terribly wrong. Etan was a responsible child, not prone to wandering off. He knew the route to the bus stop well. As the hours ticked by, their concern grew into panic. Their idyllic world, the safe haven they had created for their children, was shattered. The search for Etan Patz began, a search that would span decades and captivate the nation. Etan's route to the school bus stop was a familiar one. He'd walked it countless times before, a mere 2 blocks from his home at 113 Prince Street in SoHo, Manhattan. It was a Friday, May 25, 1979, the first time Etan was allowed to walk to the bus stop alone. He was a small boy for his age, just 6 years old, with a shock of bright red hair and a gap-toothed smile. He carried his school bag, adorned with an attached fireman's whistle, and clutched a $1 bill to buy a soda at the bodega near the bus stop. Witnesses recall seeing Etan walking along Prince Street, a seemingly ordinary morning scene in a bustling neighborhood. He was wearing a blue corduroy cap, a blue pilot-style jacket, and blue jeans. The image of him, small and determined, navigating the city streets alone for the first time, is etched in the minds of many. It was a moment of independence for Etan, a step towards growing up, a moment that would tragically become the last confirmed sighting of him. The bodega at the corner of West Broadway and Prince Street becomes a key location in the investigation. Etan never arrived at the bus stop, located a short distance away. The bodega owner, Jose Ramos, initially denied seeing Etan that morning. However, later accounts and witness statements placed Etan near the bodega around the time of his disappearance. This discrepancy raises questions and casts a shadow over the seemingly ordinary events of that morning. The bodega, a place usually associated with mundane daily routines, becomes a focal point of suspicion and mystery. The details surrounding Etan's potential interaction with Ramos, if any, remain shrouded in uncertainty. The investigation delves into Ramos's background and connections, seeking any possible link to Etan's vanishing. The cheerful image of a child heading to buy a soda takes on a sinister undertone, transforming a familiar scene into a potential crime scene. The investigation into Etan's disappearance began immediately, but the early hours and days were chaotic. The streets of SoHo were canvassed, posters with Etan's picture were plastered everywhere, and hundreds of leads poured in. The initial focus was on a possible runaway or custody dispute, but those avenues quickly proved fruitless. The Patz family was cooperative and distraught, their anguish evident in every public plea for their son's safe return. Neighbors and friends joined the search, retracing Etan's route to the bus stop, hoping for a clue, a sign, anything that could explain his sudden disappearance. The close-knit community of SoHo was shaken to its core. The familiar rhythm of daily life, the friendly exchanges on street corners, the sense of security in a well-known neighborhood, were replaced by fear, suspicion, and an unsettling quiet. The search for Etan Patz quickly became a national story, captivating the attention of the media and the public. Etan's face, with his bright red hair and innocent eyes, became a symbol of missing children everywhere. His disappearance highlighted the vulnerability of children in urban environments and the terrifying reality of stranger abduction. The case prompted a nationwide reassessment of child safety practices and led to increased awareness about the dangers lurking in seemingly safe places. The image of Etan walking alone to the bus stop, a symbol of newfound independence just moments before his disappearance, became a chilling reminder of the fragility of childhood and the ever-present potential for tragedy to strike in the most unexpected ways. We've established the context of SoHo in the late 1970s, a neighborhood undergoing significant change, and introduced the Patz family. 6-year-old Etan Patz vanished on May 25, 1979, while walking to the school bus stop for the very first time alone. This seemingly small act of independence tragically became the defining moment of his story and a pivotal case in missing children investigations. That Friday morning began like any other for the Patz family. Etan was eager to prove his responsibility, and his parents, wanting to foster his independence, agreed to let him walk the 2 blocks alone. He left his apartment building at 113 Prince Street with a small amount of money for a soda, a smile on his face, and never made it to the bus stop at the corner of Prince and West Broadway. It was a route he'd walked countless times with his mother, but this was his first solo venture. The initial response, as we often see in cases like this, involved a degree of assumption. It wasn't unusual for children to wander off briefly in those days. There was, perhaps, a less pervasive sense of immediate danger. The police initially focused on searching the immediate area, believing Etan might have just gotten lost or delayed. They checked with neighbors, local businesses, and nearby parks. The Patz family, understandably frantic, began their own desperate search, plastering missing person posters with Etan's sweet, freckled face throughout the neighborhood. The posters, featuring a recent school photo, became a haunting symbol of the case, a constant reminder of the little boy lost amidst the bustling city streets. The image would become seared into public consciousness as the search expanded. The crucial early hours and days are so often vital in these cases, and with Etan, the lack of immediate significant leads made the investigation incredibly challenging. The bus driver didn't recall seeing Etan, and none of the other children at the stop remembered seeing him either. There were no witnesses to any abduction or suspicious activity in the vicinity of Prince and West Broadway. This lack of concrete information created a frustrating void in the initial stages of the investigation, leaving authorities grasping for any clue that could point them in the right direction. The search widened, extending beyond SoHo and into other parts of Manhattan and eventually across state lines and national borders. The Patz family's tireless efforts to keep Etan's case in the public eye played a crucial role. They relentlessly contacted media outlets, urging them to cover the story and keep the pressure on law enforcement. This case marked a turning point in how missing children cases were handled and perceived. Estan's disappearance became a national news story, raising public awareness about the vulnerability of children and the importance of parental vigilance. It contributed significantly to the establishment of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, forever changing the landscape of child abduction investigations and prevention efforts. The mystery surrounding Etan's disappearance deepened with each passing day, as the initial search yielded no concrete answers and the trail grew colder. The immediate aftermath of Etan's disappearance was a whirlwind of frantic searching and rising panic. His mother, Julie, initially believed he might have simply been delayed or taken a different route. She retraced his intended path, checking with neighbors and local shopkeepers. The school was contacted, but Etan wasn't there. The police were notified within the hour, a crucial step that unfortunately wasn't always taken as swiftly in similar cases at the time. The initial search focused on the immediate area, assuming Etan might have wandered off or gotten lost. Posters with his photograph were hastily printed and plastered on lampposts, store windows, and handed out to passers-by. The image of his smiling face, framed by a pilot cap, became a haunting symbol of the unfolding tragedy. The feeling among the community shifted quickly from concern to a chilling sense of dread. The first few days were a blur of activity. Hundreds of volunteers joined the police, combing the streets, parks, and nearby areas. Divers searched the Hudson River, while helicopters surveyed the city from above. Every lead, no matter how small, was investigated. A massive media campaign was launched, with Estan's story appearing on newspapers and television broadcasts across the country. This was one of the first missing child cases to receive such widespread attention, and it marked a turning point in how such incidents were handled. Yet, despite the extensive efforts, there was no trace of Etan. The initial hope began to fade, replaced by a growing fear that something terrible had happened. The streets of SoHo, normally bustling with life, became tinged with an unsettling quiet, a reflection of the community's collective anxiety. The innocence of the neighborhood seemed shattered. The lack of any concrete evidence hampered the investigation. There were no witnesses to the abduction, no ransom demands, no signs of a struggle. It was as if Etan had simply vanished into thin air. This absence of clues fueled speculation and rumors. Some whispered about a possible custody dispute, though this was quickly dismissed by investigators. Others pointed fingers at local drifters or individuals known to have a history of preying on children. The police followed every lead, conducting countless interviews and background checks. The investigation stretched from New York City to other states, even internationally, as the desperate search for answers intensified. The case quickly became a media sensation, with daily updates and analysis, further amplifying the public's fear and fascination. The impact of Etan's disappearance resonated far beyond SoHo. It struck a nerve with parents across the country, forcing them to confront the terrifying reality that their children could be snatched away in broad daylight. The case became a symbol of the vulnerability of children in urban environments, a stark reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface of everyday life. It also highlighted the limitations of law enforcement at the time, particularly in dealing with missing children cases. The investigation, despite its scale and intensity, was plagued by early missteps and a lack of coordination. Etan's case became a catalyst for change, leading to improvements in how law enforcement agencies handle missing person reports, as well as the establishment of organizations dedicated to child safety and abduction prevention. The ripple effect of this tragedy extended far beyond the immediate family and community, shaping public awareness and policy for decades to come. Let's delve deeper into Jose Ramos, the prime suspect in Etan's disappearance. Ramos had a history of befriending young boys, often luring them with promises of soda or trips to the movies. This pattern of behavior is consistent with individuals who seek to groom and exploit children. He also worked briefly as a handyman in the SoHo neighborhood, providing him with potential knowledge of the area and, possibly, Etan's routine. While he never confessed specifically to Etan's abduction, he made incriminating statements over the years, hinting at his involvement. These statements, combined with his past behavior and proximity to the scene, painted a disturbing portrait of a man capable of such a heinous act. The question that has plagued investigators for decades is, what specific psychological factors drove him to target young boys, and how did he manage to maintain a semblance of normalcy while harboring such dark impulses? Ramos presented a confusing outward persona. He claimed to be a born-again Christian while simultaneously engaging in behaviors that directly contradicted this professed faith. He interacted with children in ways that raised red flags, yet he managed to evade serious scrutiny for an extended period. This duality, this contradiction between his presented self and his actions, is a classic characteristic of individuals with manipulative tendencies. They often adopt a facade of respectability to disarm potential victims and their families. This raises the critical question: was this religious persona a genuine attempt at redemption, a cynical ploy to deflect suspicion, or a complex mix of both? Understanding this internal conflict is crucial to unraveling the mystery surrounding Etan's disappearance. One of the most chilling aspects of the case is the lack of concrete physical evidence directly linking Ramos to Etan's disappearance. Despite extensive searches and investigations, Etan's body was never found, and no forensic evidence directly tied Ramos to the crime. This absence of definitive proof has made it incredibly challenging to secure a conviction. It forces us to rely heavily on circumstantial evidence and behavioral patterns, creating a frustratingly incomplete picture. It begs the question, how could someone seemingly vanish without a trace in such a densely populated area? Was Ramos meticulous in covering his tracks, or did a combination of unfortunate circumstances contribute to the lack of physical evidence? Another puzzling element of Ramos's personality is his apparent willingness to engage with investigators, while simultaneously withholding crucial information. He made tantalizing statements that alluded to his involvement, but never fully confessed. This behavior suggests a complex internal struggle. He seemed to crave attention and acknowledgement of his actions, yet he also desperately wanted to avoid the legal consequences. This internal conflict is a hallmark of individuals who have committed heinous acts, but grapple with guilt, shame, and a desire to maintain some level of control over the narrative. It leaves investigators and the public with a lingering sense of unease, knowing that the full truth may never be revealed. Let's delve into the frustrating and heartbreaking labyrinth that the investigation into Etan's disappearance became. Early on, the sheer volume of tips flooded the system. Hundreds of leads, many well-intentioned but ultimately fruitless, diverted resources. One notable missed lead involved a school bus driver who reportedly saw Etan talking to a man near his bus stop. Unfortunately, this lead wasn't thoroughly pursued until much later, by which valuable time and potential evidence had been lost. The initial search also focused heavily on the immediate vicinity, perhaps overlooking the possibility that Etan had been transported out of the area quickly. The lack of clear-cut evidence and the sheer number of people in the area that day made it incredibly difficult to pinpoint a specific direction for the investigation. This early confusion contributed significantly to the ongoing mystery. Adding to the complexity and anguish were a series of taunting communications received by the Patz family and law enforcement in the years following Etan's disappearance. Letters claiming responsibility or hinting at his whereabouts surfaced periodically, adding another layer of confusion and false hope. One such letter, received in 1981, detailed the alleged abduction and murder of Etan. While the letter contained specific details, it ultimately proved to be a hoax, further deepening the family's pain. These cruel attempts to manipulate the investigation and exploit the family's grief added an insidious dimension to the case. The constant influx of misinformation and false leads made it incredibly challenging for investigators to separate genuine clues from fabricated stories. This also exacerbated the emotional toll on the Patz family, who were desperately clinging to any glimmer of hope. The Jose Ramos connection introduced a frustrating chapter of near misses and legal complexities. Ramos, a convicted pedophile with a known connection to a woman who had briefly walked Etan to school, became a key suspect. While circumstantial evidence pointed toward his involvement, there wasn't enough concrete evidence to secure a conviction. His chilling statements, hinting at knowledge of Etan's fate, further fueled suspicion, but ultimately led to a dead end, legally speaking. This created a torturous situation for the Patz family, believing they knew who was responsible, yet unable to obtain legal closure. This case highlights the limitations of the legal system in cases where compelling circumstantial evidence exists, but falls short of definitive proof. The emergence of Pedro Hernandez decades later offered a surprising, yet ultimately inconclusive resolution. Hernandez, a former bodega worker in SoHo, confessed to luring Etan into the basement of the store and murdering him. His confession, while detailed, lacked corroborating physical evidence. The defense argued that Hernandez's confession was false, citing his history of mental illness. The subsequent trial and conviction, while providing a semblance of closure for some, also left many questions unanswered. The lack of physical evidence and the reliance on a confession from a mentally unstable individual created a sense of ambiguity around the true circumstances of Etan's disappearance. This highlights the delicate balance between finding answers and ensuring justice is served fairly. The disappearance of Etan Patz sent shockwaves through New York City and beyond. It fundamentally altered the way parents viewed the world, instilling a fear that hadn't existed so pervasively before. Suddenly, the simple act of allowing a child to walk to the school bus stop alone became fraught with anxiety. This case marked a turning point, raising awareness about child safety and the vulnerability of children in urban environments. The constant media coverage, the missing posters plastered everywhere, the endless search efforts, these all contributed to a collective sense of unease and vulnerability that permeated the city. The impact extended far beyond Etan's family, touching the lives of countless families who reevaluated their own safety practices and grappled with the terrifying realization that such a tragedy could strike anyone, anywhere. The emotional toll on Etan's parents, Stan and Julie Patz, was unimaginable. The agonizing uncertainty, the endless waiting, the fading hope. It's a burden no parent should ever have to bear. They lived for decades not knowing what happened to their son, constantly replaying the events leading up to his disappearance, questioning every decision they made. The media attention, while helpful in spreading awareness, also intruded on their grief, forcing them to relive their trauma publicly. They became unwilling symbols of a national tragedy, forever linked to the image of their missing son. Their perseverance in keeping Etan's memory alive and advocating for missing children is a testament to their strength and resilience in the face of unspeakable loss. The Patz family wasn't alone in their suffering. The SoHo community, where Etan lived, was deeply affected by his disappearance. The close-knit neighborhood, once considered a safe haven, was forever changed. Neighbors who had known Etan, children who had played with him, were left with a lingering sense of fear and vulnerability. The case eroded the sense of community trust and instilled a sense of paranoia that persisted for years. The annual commemorations of Etan's disappearance serve as a reminder of the tragedy and the long-lasting impact it had on the neighborhood's psyche. Even today, the case continues to evoke strong emotions and a sense of shared loss within the community. Beyond the immediate family and community, Etan's disappearance contributed to a broader cultural shift in how society perceived childhood and safety. It fueled a growing awareness of the dangers children face, leading to increased parental vigilance and changes in law enforcement practices. The case played a significant role in the development of the missing children's movement and the creation of national databases for missing children. Etan's image became one of the first to appear on milk cartons, a stark reminder of the vulnerability of children and the importance of community involvement in their safety. His disappearance served as a catalyst for greater public awareness and legislative action aimed at protecting children from abduction and exploitation. We left off with Jose Ramos, a prime suspect, linked to Etan through disturbingly similar behaviors and a known association with a woman who briefly walked Etan home from school. The investigation, however, remained stagnant for years, hampered by lack of concrete evidence placing Ramos with Etan on the day of his disappearance. The pressure mounted, the public outcry never ceased, and the Patz family endured a relentless torment of not knowing. But the case, though cold, was far from closed. Detectives continued to revisit old leads, re-interview witnesses, and painstakingly piece together the fragmented puzzle. The next significant development wouldn't come until decades later, a testament to the tenacity of law enforcement and the enduring hope that justice, no matter how delayed, would eventually prevail. The turning point arrived in 2010, when the Manhattan District Attorney's Office reopened the investigation, bringing a renewed vigor to the decades-long search. The focus sharpened on a particular building on Prince Street, not far from the Patz residence. This building had undergone renovation shortly after Etan's disappearance, and investigators were now revisiting the possibility that crucial evidence may have been overlooked. The renewed focus on the building led them to a specific individual, Pedro Hernandez, a man who had worked in a bodega in the same building during the time of Etan's disappearance. Hernandez had never been a serious suspect before, his name buried amongst countless others in the massive case file. In 2012, after relentless questioning, Pedro Hernandez confessed to luring Etan into the basement of the bodega, strangling him, and disposing of the body. His confession was detailed, chilling, and consistent with certain aspects of the case that had puzzled investigators for years. Hernandez claimed he'd offered Etan a soda, a seemingly innocent gesture that turned tragically sinister. He described the act of strangulation, the panic that followed, and the meticulous steps he took to conceal his horrific crime. While his confession provided a semblance of closure, it also opened a new chapter of legal proceedings and renewed anguish for the Patz family, who were once again forced to confront the devastating reality of their son's fate. Hernandez's confession, while seemingly a breakthrough, was not without its complications. He had a history of mental illness, including schizophrenia, and a low IQ, which raised concerns about the reliability of his statements. His defense team argued that his confession was coerced, and that he lacked the mental capacity to understand the gravity of his admissions. The subsequent trials became a complex battleground of legal arguments, expert testimonies, and emotional pleas. The first trial ended in a hung jury, further prolonging the agony for the Patz family, and leaving the public in a state of suspense. The second trial, however, resulted in a conviction. In 2017, Pedro Hernandez was found guilty of kidnapping and murdering Etan Patz and sentenced to life in prison. So we've meticulously dissected the Etan Patz case, from that fateful morning in 1979 when he vanished into thin air, to the eventual conviction of Pedro Hernandez decades later. We've examined the flimsy circumstantial evidence, the false confessions, the media frenzy that engulfed the nation, and the relentless pursuit of justice by Stan and Julie Patz. Yet, even with the conviction, a sense of unease persists. The complete absence of physical evidence, the reliance on a coerced confession from a mentally unstable individual, and the lingering questions about Jose Ramos's potential involvement create a cloud of doubt that hangs heavy over the case. Did the justice system finally get it right? Or did the desperate need for closure lead to a miscarriage of justice? This ambiguity is, perhaps, the most unsettling aspect of this tragic story. Indeed, the Etan Patz case serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities of children in urban environments and the limitations of law enforcement in missing person cases, particularly in the pre-internet era. The lack of surveillance cameras, the reliance on eyewitness accounts, and the sheer volume of people in a city like New York made it incredibly difficult to track Etan's movements or identify potential suspects. Even with advancements in forensic science and investigative techniques, the passage of time eroded crucial evidence, making it harder to establish a definitive narrative of what happened to Etan. This case remains a chilling example of how easily a child can disappear without a trace, leaving behind a devastated family and a community forever scarred. What strikes me most is the idea of evil lurking in plain sight. SoHo, in the late 1970s, despite its artistic vibrancy, was also a place of shadows and unseen dangers. Etan, with his innocent trust, walked into the path of a predator who may have appeared perfectly ordinary. This case shattered the illusion of safety in familiar surroundings, forcing parents to confront the terrifying reality that danger can lurk just around the corner, disguised in the mundane. The photograph of Etan on the milk carton, his trusting eyes staring out at us, became a symbol of lost innocence and a constant reminder of the fragility of life. And that's the chilling legacy of Etan Patz. His disappearance changed the way we view childhood, parenting, and the very fabric of our communities. It ushered in an era of heightened awareness about child safety, from stranger danger campaigns to milk carton photos, forever altering the landscape of childhood in America. But even with all the changes, the central question remains: how can we truly safeguard our children when the monsters who prey on them often wear the masks of normalcy? That, I believe, is the question that continues to haunt us long after the headlines have faded. Thank you for walking with us through the shadows. The story doesn't end here. It lingers, echoing through time, reminding us that the darkest truths often hide in plain sight. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant. This case remains unsolved. Perhaps the truth is still out there.